In the last episode, we built this tent along with 12 other buildings down in the town, and these things are supposed to act as a villager trading hall for our villager setup, but currently they don't really do anything. They all have like lecterns in them and stuff, but none of those lecterns have villagers behind them, and I have no way to get villagers behind them. So that is what we're going to tackle in this episode. Now, 2 episodes ago, I went over how we're going to do that, the system that will get villagers from the zombification machine over in that building to all of these ones. But in case you missed that one, I'll go over it again. It all starts in this building, where if we head in here, there's a little lectern, and you can select every single different type of enchantment that villagers can sell. An enchantment for a bow, an enchantment for a sword, enchantment for weapons in general. There are 12 different categories that correspond to the 12 different buildings. And then once you've selected the category, theoretically, you just press this button here and it would send the villager to the correct place. But currently, none of that happens because there isn't any system underneath this other than the system that actually changes the sign. So we need to build something else. And to show off that system, I've hopped over into a creative testing world where I already have some of it built. Pretty much the villager is going to get put onto a gantry carriage like this, and then we'll have a system of gantry shafts that can move that carriage underground going to all the different buildings. And they'll be connected by junctions like this that allow the villager to go in 3 different directions. The way it works is pretty much you power the directions you don't want the villager to go, and then it will just go into the unpowered direction. So if we flip the signal here, it just goes that way. And with this selector, we can just unpower all of the different lines that lead to the correct building, and it really shouldn't be too bad. And let's say we want to have the villager go straight, we just flip those levers so that one's on and that one's off, and if we send it on its way again, it still goes to the correct place. And this system pretty much works without fail, so this is what we're going to build. We just have to actually build a lot more of it than this. And I suppose the first step of that is actually deciding where these shafts are going to go. We know it needs to start in this building and get to all 12 of the buildings that are over in this area, but we can't just take the most like cut and dry route because there's other stuff underground like that rail line or this conveyor belt, and we need a certain amount of space for the gantry carriage to actually be able to fit. So we kind of have to figure out where it's going to go. It's going to start here, and it's going to go underground here, and there's actually not a lot of room here, so this might be one of the hardest bits. And because of that, I think I'm going to go out the back of this building and then head this way, because there's just a lot more open space here, and the first building is actually right here. So we would stop by here and then probably continue around and get to the rest of them from here, because honestly, the rest of this area is pretty open. It's just this one conveyor belt that I have to contend with, and that shouldn't be that hard to avoid. So we're going to start by going around the back here, and then I'll plan out the rest in a second. There we go. I went ahead and made a creative copy of the world just so I could go ahead and plan everything out nice and easily, and you might notice I haven't followed my original plan like at all. This doesn't go back to avoid anything because I had a realization. Minecraft is a 3D game, so I don't actually have to avoid any of this stuff. I can just go under it. So that is a lot easier than my original plan, and it makes this whole line a lot simpler. This is pretty much the most efficient route you could probably take to get to all 12 different buildings, and it's all 90-degree angles, so it should work with the gantry shaft system perfectly. So now all we have to do is build it, but there's one problem. This gantry line will not actually get the villagers into the buildings. It will get them under the buildings, but I still actually haven't come up with a way to get them from down here to up here. And for some of the houses here that have like 2 layers, it might actually be genuinely really difficult. So I'm going to go mess around in a creative world for a little bit and try and solve that problem. I haven't fixed the 2-layer problem, but that might not actually be as much of an issue as I think it will, but I did fix the problem of getting them actually into the house in the first place. This is the system that we looked at earlier for how we're actually going to move the gantry shaft around, and I've refined it a little bit more. The villager is essentially going to be in this minecart, and then you send them to the correct place, and once they get there, they get ejected from the minecart into a like determined location, then that location gets pushed up and becomes part of the floor of the building, which gets them into the building. And then, you know, the minecart can just come back and get collected somehow. I haven't really figured that part out yet, but I don't think it'll actually be that hard. So this system should work actually really well for the 1-story buildings, and for the 2-story buildings, let's pop back over into the other world and look at it. Okay, so with the current system, the villager is just going to kind of come up out of the floor, and then they're in this room and not behind a lectern. But that actually doesn't have as many problems as it seems like it does, because if I put down a villager in here, he's going to go for that lectern, but he won't actually ever leave. And it's kind of hard to demonstrate that because he has no incentive to leave right now, but he's never going to walk out this door because this door, if we look in the F3 menu, is technically open. So the villager thinks it can walk through the door, so it's just going to like sit here and do this, trying to walk through because it thinks it's open. And because of that, they can't get out because they'll never try and close the door before walking through it, so it completely fixes that problem. And all the doors in all of these buildings are designed like that, so it really shouldn't be an issue. And as for the 2nd-story thing, and actually getting them behind their lecterns, I'm thinking it's not going to be that bad. Oh, is he going to try and leave? No. I'm thinking it's not going to be that bad to actually get them behind the lecterns. At least I'm hoping it won't be, because I've kind of just banked on being able to just do this by hand and essentially just shove them into place, and ideally there won't be lecterns here, although this is proving a little bit more difficult than I originally thought it would be. And then there's the upstairs problem, which you can kind of see solves itself because they'll just try and pathfind upstairs. Although now that I'm actually trying it, it's very difficult to get a villager behind a lectern, isn't it? So that might be something that I need to solve, and clearly I need to do a little bit more thought behind this, but with just some simple like blocking things off, I think it should definitely be possible, and I can kind of just do stuff like that to get the villagers into place. I don't know if that's going to work very well because that was a lot of effort and I failed a couple times, but the villagers should never be able to leave, so we'll never make like negative progress theoretically. With that problem like kind of solved, let's just go ahead and build the entire thing, because I at least have a way to get the villagers into the buildings, and that's definitely all I'm planning on doing for now. So let's go ahead and do that part, and I can figure out any little kinks in the plan later once I actually have villagers to test it out with. So let's go ahead and build this entire gantry shaft system, and also all the little piston bits that are going to be connected to it to get the villagers into the building. It's going to be a lot of work, so I will be back in a second. I ended up making way more progress than I thought I would in between clips there, but I got the entire tunnel system finished, and this thing is a freaking maze. I've gotten lost so many times just like wandering around this place while I was like designing it and building it, but it turned out really well. So it goes around to every single different building, and of course it doesn't go up to any of them right now, it just goes to ends like this, but if we go up from one of these things, there's a building here, so that should work pretty well. And I believe it should actually get the gantry carriage to the correct place, but we're going to go ahead and test that. I have redstone blocks in place so that it should go to the very farthest away stop, and yeah, that is not what's supposed to happen, shockingly. You know, it's supposed to actually take the entire thing. My guess is that the glue that's supposed to hold this whole thing together is not in place for some reason, so I'm just going to go fix that. There we go, it is all glued up and the entire thing is actually connected to itself now, so it should work. If we get in this minecart and flick this lever, the entire thing will go to the final stop. It is a little bit jittery because it tends to stop before a lot of the intersections, which is why I have these extra little shafts here before each intersection, because that way it doesn't break when it stops at those points. But overall, it doesn't actually take that long to get to its final destination, and it's here now. Unfortunately, can't really flick the lever from this far away, but you know, that won't really be a problem when it's villagers riding it rather than me. But the whole thing works like shockingly well, and I'm pretty sure all of these gantry shafts are going the correct way, so it should be able to do any route we want, and the logic system for it shouldn't even be that bad, because that's kind of the next step, is to get it so the selector up top will actually get the minecart, or the gantry carriage going to the correct place, and that's just powering these lines correctly. So if we want to go to this one, for instance, all we need to do is power that line, and then it'll go down this route. And if we want to get to like this end one over here, we just like power that one, power this one, and power this one. Just power all the routes that aren't going to the correct place. So it should be pretty easy to implement, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and do next. It was pretty easy, but it did take a long while because there are just a bunch of different wireless redstone links, but the entire thing should theoretically work now. So we're going to go ahead and test it. If we pop on over to the selector, we're just going to tell it to go on over to Tridents because that's kind of far away. We hit the spacebar, it goes, and now we have to rush underground to actually see it moving. So what that should have done is the selector will now power all of the Trident links, which is going to lock off all of the paths that don't lead to the Trident. And that looks like it's worked because this is just the long path that leads to the Trident building. And that is absolutely beautiful. Now the moment of truth, whether or not it comes back, which it probably will, assuming I did everything right, but there's a significant possibility that just something comes up I didn't think of. Looks like we're good though, because it's kind of just going. Okay, this system works really well, actually. So I guess we're ready to get the villagers off of this thing and into the buildings, because theoretically that can work for every route. I'll go ahead and test them all off camera, because that's going to be quite boring. But all we have to do is then get the villagers from the ends of these lines up into the building, which shouldn't be too difficult, I don't think. Not too difficult at all. I've put in the entire system that is on this end of things, so where the villager initially drops down, and I've also gone ahead and put in the thing that gets it up to the building in just one of the ends, the tool shed specifically, which I realized something about this when I was doing it. It's just kind of a really tall piston, but the tool shed doesn't touch the ground, so there's this weird little shaft now, but other than that, there's no aesthetic change to the building, which should be how it is for all of the rest of them too, which is super nice. And this system is actually really simple. It just has a little thing to detect whether or not the little carriage thing is there, so that it can actually send the villager up. It works really well, I hope. So we're going to go ahead and test it. There's a bunch of complicated stuff here, including the most optimal power generation ever of 40 water wheels to power this entire thing. But if we hop in here and pretend to be a villager, we can grab the little controller, and normally you'd do this from up on the surface. You'd select the tool shed, which I've already done, with the A and D buttons. You can see lines changing there. Then you press space, and they're sent off. There's a little bit of delay between the minecart and the thing, but that worked perfectly, and hopefully everything else has worked perfectly, because it should deposit the villager and then head back so we can actually recollect the minecart. And minecart isn't there, so I think we're good. Pretty much what happens is it comes back here, and then this fan blows the minecart into that cactus so that it can get sent all the way back up to the dispenser that it originally came from, so we never need more than one minecart, which is super nice. So it works with players, but does it work with villagers? Well, we should probably test that, because villagers tend to mess up everything. I don't know how they could possibly do anything here. The villager is in a minecart the entire time, but who knows? So let's go ahead and actually test that system, because I also have yet to test the thing that gets the villager down into this hole, so I'd like to just like run through all of that. So to start off the process, you come into the little zombification hut here, and you press this button to call for a villager from the villager breeder, which is just across the way, and it takes a second just because there's a lot of minecart rails. Then you go ahead and close this trapdoor, because the zombie really wants to attack you and not the villager, but once you get the golden apple, you know you're clear. The villager has been zombified, he's been splashed with the weakness potion, and you can now heal him, which takes about 5 minutes, but after which the villager is fully ready to accept a profession with all of the discounts that go along with healing it. So you just give it a lectern, and it should become a librarian, although this process seems to be incredibly janky, and a lot of times it just doesn't work for long periods of time. I know the time of day has something to do with it. It has to be after 9 a.m. for the villagers to work, because they have standards, so I'm just going to wait until it accepts the lectern as a job station. Well, it turns out this time it wasn't actually the time of day, it was a lectern a whole building over. I seriously don't understand how the villager knew it was there, but whatever, he now has a trade, which is a piercing 2, and that's not something I really want, so just refresh the trade until you get what you're looking for. And in this case, since the only part of the system down below I've actually built is for tools, we're either looking for Fortune 3, Efficiency 5, or Silk Touch, all of which are not incredibly uncommon. The thing is that Efficiency 5 is going to take a while because the higher level enchants tend to be a little bit more difficult to get. So I'm guessing we're going to end up with Silk Touch here, but this process can take up to an hour, especially if you're looking for a specific enchantment. So I'll be back. Literally the exact one after I ended the last clip was Silk Touch, so that is a new record for me by a long shot. However, I don't actually have the resources to lock in the trade right now. You need to do one trade with them before you can zombify them again, because currently if I break his lectern, he's not going to sell Silk Touch anymore. So I have to go grab some emeralds and some books. There we go. I got the emeralds and the books, and the trade is now locked in. I actually had to trade with the side to get emeralds, which locked in his profession anyway, but this is the cheapest trade, generally speaking, so that's the one you use to lock it in. And if this trade was any more expensive than 1 emerald, I would go ahead and use this button to zombify him again, but since it is a single level thing, it's pretty cheap already, so we can just go ahead and test out the brand new system. If I hit this button, the villager is gone, and hopefully that villager is now in place in the bottom here, and I'm pretty sure he should be. Yeah, there he is, and all we have to do is click the spacebar because the rest of the thing is already selected, so as long as we just tell it to go, we're good. That's the moment of truth. I really hope this works, so I'm going to go ahead and go into free cam up here just to make sure nothing bad happens, and actually I'm just gonna go wait for him in that room. I have faith in my system. Okay, I press the space bar. The floor opens up as it should. A villager is put on it, and that did work despite really not looking like it. And now we have the task of getting the villager behind one of these lecterns, which could prove to be really difficult or really easy. I kind of don't know which it's gonna be, but I pretty much just have to get this guy to actually cooperate, which if you know anything of villagers, they don't like to, but this one is very special because he just kind of did. That is 1 enchantment done out of however many there are. Wow, that was really easy, actually. I went ahead and blocked the door because despite the fact that the doors don't let the villagers out, they do kind of have an obsession of trying to get out, so they'll just stand here and you can't do anything with them. So I decided blocking the door is the best option, and that worked so well. I really hope this lectern is his job site so we can restock his stuff, you know, in case I need like 12 Silk Touch books or something, but you know, just in case. That works so well. Okay, well, I would just go ahead and do the rest of the villagers, but I kind of have to finish the system first, don't I? But that process is actually going to be incredibly boring, so I'm actually not going to do it right now. Instead, I'm going to end this episode here, but I will do that in between episodes because it's not actually hard to do, and you guys already know what it looks like, so I don't really need to show it off very much. It's just this with some stuff underground. So we're going to do that in between episodes, which means next time we can actually get villagers in. Do you know how happy that makes me? This is like, I don't even know what episode of this project we're on now, but the fact that I'm actually going to get to do villagers in the next one, that is amazing. So I'm really excited for it. I hope you guys are too. But for now, I hope you like this one, and I will see you then.